Okay, so the next skill is looking at experimental probability, and in a lot of cases, and especially with games and things like slot machines, there's both a theoretical probability, which we looked at in the last unit, and that's often a theoretical probability of winning a prize, but you could also just do experiments and use the game lots of times and see how often you win. So one thing that we're often asked to do is find out whether or not a game or a machine is fair by comparing the experimental probability with the theoretical probability. So here's an example where a die, which is a single dice, is rolled 24 times and it lands on 6 5 times. You're asked to check whether or not you think the dice is biased. Then you're asked, how could you improve the experiment? Well, let's take a look. The theoretical probability of getting a 6 is 1 out of 6. So in 24 trials, your expected number of 6s is a 6th times by 24. So 24 divided by 6, which is 4. So if the dice was fair, you would on average expect to get 4 6s if you rolled the dice 24 times. Now here you're being asked to make a judgment call, because in this case they got 5 times. Is that different enough from what you would expect for you to conclude that the dice was biased? Now, some small amount of variation in this is expected. Sometimes you're only going to get 3 6s, 2 6s, sometimes you might be lucky and get 5 or 6 6s. If you got as few as 0 or 1 or as many as 8 or 9, then you might start to think it's biased. But 5 is close enough to 4. So 5 is close to 4. Not biased. The actual maths you need to determine whether it's enough to think it's biased or not biased isn't something you're going to cover until A level, but as a rule of thumb, if it's a lot less or a lot more than what you'd expect, then you can conclude it's biased, otherwise you conclude it's not biased. How could you improve the experiment? Well, experimental probability is only reliable if there's lots of trials. So how could you improve the experiment? The answer is increasing number of trials. Okay, pause the video now while you get down the worked example, and then there's a couple of short questions for you to try. Okay, 3 fairly straightforward questions for you to have a go at. Pause the video now while you write down the questions and attempt the answers. When you're ready, press play and we'll go through the solutions.